So Ben, I was just turning it over to you as we were getting into it. Would love to hear, throughout the beginning of this week, maybe a little bit Monday, Tuesday, what's been on your radar, what's been working, what hasn't been working, any names that stand out to you moving forward, perhaps anything that you're live trading today.
Okay. First up, I'll go with Mullen, Muln. Discussed it over the weekend and had an inside day to work with there yesterday, but it didn't come out to the upside. It actually pulled back. But when it dipped back yesterday, it came back right into an area of confluence that I was watching. You had year to date anchored VWAP right there, anchored VWAP off of the high, anchored VWAP off of the low. It kind of tagged that area. You had 1020 cloud right there too. So as it came in this morning, I grabbed it, and then we had a nice little rally this afternoon in it. Their auto show is tomorrow, and that's when they're doing their big reveal. But standard pivot above 1349, tried to get through there, came back in. So just want to see if it can push through there. It's just above 13 now. I've got a cost basis right around 12. So just want to see if it can push through that pivot, make a little run into the big reveal tomorrow. The other one that I had high hopes for this morning was Dutch Brothers. It rolled over below that pivot of 62. I was looking for that pivot to hold because if you have anchored VWAP attached to the swing low from October, you closed right there yesterday. So, and it had held last week. So I was looking for that to bounce right there at that level, kind of in the VWAP pinch there, the lower end of it, and then hold that standard pivot at 62. But actually ended up slicing below there early, but trying to recover now back above 61. So I'm going to watch that carefully to see if it can reclaim that anchored VWAP, reclaim that 62 level, and go outside there. The other one I'm still in from last week that's acting really well and moved into new highs is ZIP, through the pivot at 30.08 and now through the all-time high today at 32. So looking good there. Volume today running still almost triple digits, plus 96%. The one that I have that's not working that I'm going to have to do something with is GAMB. I think we discussed this one last week, hasn't gone anywhere, still kind of sitting at that pivot, but they have earnings Thursday morning. So I can't really hold out waiting for this one much longer. I have no cushion to hold into earnings. So that's the one that I would call my problem child. Make a decision on that today or tomorrow, but definitely ahead of earnings, likely to bail out on that one. I think that's it. CPE, the other one I was thinking about taking and adding a little bit more if it came in a little bit further, but it didn't. It's an inside day there, so maybe I'll add a little more when that inside day comes out, if it comes out. But energy not acting, real well today. So I think that's about it. I mean, I'll also, watching these crypto miners. I would definitely say yesterday, Mara didn't work, MARA. I like the recovery today. I'm not worried at all about that subpoena. I'm more worried about this management team raising cash at the wrong times. Actually, I mean, you name it, last night after the close and this morning, it seems like everybody's raising cash. But yeah, that was quite a hit. I have plenty of cushion here. I still have like 40% cushion to kind of let it do its thing. It's still well above the 50-day. But yeah, that didn't work very well yesterday. That's about it on my end.
Interesting stuff. Some definitely familiar names there with Gamble, Rose. I had to get out of Gamble after a while. It just was not working for me as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, tough year overall for that one. And then with Bros, I saw someone posting yesterday. It seems like everyone has great in-person experiences, which I think is a good sign. That was definitely one that's kind of, I feel like, been on our radar for a little bit now. Just pulling up the chart real quick. Yeah, I see what you were saying with it, where it did not end up holding, kind of breaking down a little bit there. Okay.
Yeah,
So
but
good
still
stuff.
could
Yeah,
recover though. Like if it reclaims that 62 into the close or closes real strong above that pivot and above that anchored VWAP, that's going to look kind of pretty there. You got kind of a falling wedge there, back into the pivot retest. So we'll just have to see how it closes.
and that's the anchored VWAP from the IPO.
Not from the IPO. If you go from the IPO, that's going to be a little bit lower. So kind of what how we used the handoff. You've got the IPO one, then you take the low.
I
What day
see.
is it? Like October 4th or October 6th. It held there last week. You had three tags of it last week. And then it looked like after yesterday it was going to hold again. And then this morning sliced below it, but now it's trying to reclaim it. So if it reclaims and you have that standard pivot there of 62, that's that swing high from off of the IPO. If you can get back above there, maybe it's in business there. It would look like just a standard retest of the pivot.
Yeah, it's looking pretty interesting. Okay, I just put out a tweet from the Golf Blacksburg account. If anybody's listening, and we're gonna have time for this, so please do go to the Golf Blacksburg account. You can see a co-hosting and just drop whatever stocks you want us to analyze underneath that. And we'll try to make it through some of these different tickers. So I see only two there right now, so you have a pretty good chance if you go in there and check that out to drop your ticker. Okay, so I'm going to go through the other two guys, and then I'll come back and we'll do maybe a little bit of overall market sentiment. But yeah, let's keep it going with some of these individual names, what you're buying, selling, trading, all that type of stuff. Jake, you want to go next?
Yeah, what's up?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. Yeah, no, today honestly has been one of the more exciting days I've had in the market in a while. Um, Not necessarily because I'm making money, actually because I'm having a very interesting case study on First Solar right now and watching that play out. So, I entered. So I have same stocks that I've been talking about for a while. You guys know me. I'm not really day trading or anything. So I'm still looking at ACB. Added that today in the low 830s. CGC added after taking some profit yesterday. Some people were asking why I took some profit yesterday. Well, today happened. It was very natural to get a pullback after you've rocketed up 30%. I did think that the market was probably going to move a little harder than it did on Monday, but really all of these setups and the thesis for marijuana stocks for me is not on the daily chart. It's not even really on the weekly chart. If everyone wants to go take a look at the monthly chart on your CGCs, your ACBs, that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm going to trade around a core position. So, a core position is essentially you have X amount of shares that you want to always own, but then you take some off the table. So let's say I want 5,000 shares of CGC uh, at all times, but I have 7,500 shares. Then if I'm up on 2,500 shares, I'm going to take some profit if I think the market's going to pull back a little bit. Now, ACB and CGC, I'm not sure what's kind of happening over the last probably 15 or 20 minutes, but they seem to be catching a little bit of a bid. So the thesis remains there. I have a decent sized position, but one thing that I'm really focusing on right now is kind of preserving capital. Last week was easily the biggest trading week I've ever had in my life. And so, I'm just kind of trading what has high probability setups, but I'm also holding quite a bit of cash because I definitely do not want to give back what I gained on some of these trades last week. So, um, yeah, ACB is one. Yes, I know it's probably not the most fundamentally sound company. I don't really care. It has a high beta when marijuana moves, just like CGC does. And what a high beta means is it's very volatile. So as you guys, as some have seen over the last day, not only do they move up very quickly, but they move down very quickly as well. And that's why you've seen some of that crazy volatility in some of these names. So to each their own on what they want to trade for the marijuana stocks. Some people are loving the U.S. based stocks. I don't trade OTC stocks. It's not my style. There's not enough liquidity. There's not enough volume. But for those that like the fundamental side of the U.S. stocks and MSOS is a proxy, for those, then that's awesome. But for me, I've had experience trading CGC, ACB, so that's what I'm going to, naturally gravitate towards. So those are some that I'm actively swing trading. Probably will trade around core positions as the market evolves, and if these go up, then I'll probably scale in, scale out. That's kind of the name of the game. F sell. I did sell some of that yesterday. I took a little bit of a loss on that one. I did initially take some gains on it. On Friday in one account, but then I had a huge position in another account. I think I stopped out right around like 1090 or so yesterday, with the thesis of it going back to around 1030, which is simply just that previous high anchor VWAP that we finally got above. And Gav, I did post a chart of that earlier today, so if you want to pin that. But essentially, what happened was we were at this diagonal resistance zone above, and it was something I had mentioned in the weekend video, that we may get a little bit of a pullback, but the thesis is still on that longer term weekly setup. So I have not added FCell back yet. I've been having too much fun and pretty much being fascinated by how these First Solar options are moving. So that's kind of the one that I did take an initial trade on today, and just talk about luck. Got in about 15 minutes before whatever news came out that I don't really think has any type of honestly, I don't think has any type of impact on the stocks. I'm not sure why it dropped like that, but honestly, I'm glad it did, because I have never seen an options chain move like that in my life. So um, I'll talk about the options contract I'm in on here, but I'm going to keep it kind of just off of any posting and stuff, because I want people to not look, oh, this is what Jake got in, this is what I'm going to get in. But my thesis was the January 21 120 calls, and when First Solar started to tank, the spread on these calls were like literally 100%. I've never seen something like that in my life. Literally, the bid was like 230 and the ask was like 580. And I initially started getting in around 480 or so. So as the price was dropping, if I would have just put an ask on it like 520, I probably would have gotten filled, because it did start. People were actually hitting the ask with that big of a spread. I've never seen that big of a spread on any stock. So right now, I'm actually still adding. I do think that this is a massive overreaction. Go look at some of the other solar names. None of them are moving like this at all. Could I be wrong? Maybe. And if I am, that's fine. It's not a huge position. It's not going to affect, really any P&L for me. And that's why I'm in the options position, because, this thing likes to move, but it can move kind of in spurts. So I want to take advantage of that. And honestly, I'll probably add a little more of those January 2022 120 calls. And if it doesn't work out as I mentioned, then I'll probably just take the loss if we can't really catch any type of bid in the coming, let's say, a week and a half or so. But there's still literally over 2 months left, so I have plenty of time. And honestly, I've seen some really interesting, I, for lack of better words, shenanigans going on the spreads here. So I'm still bullish, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, First Solar, FCell, CGC, ACB are the ones that I'm focusing on right now.
I went ahead and pinned all the charts for those to the top of this space, so hopefully those should be showing up there for people. Now,
Cool.
with First Solar, having this pretty solid drop today, did you come in and take some of those contracts today off this drop?
No, I got in 15. I initially started a position like 15 minutes before the drop. So I literally went from buying, I think I had, two buys with an average of around 480 or so. And all of a sudden I'm looking at the contracts. I'm like, what the hell's going on with the spread here? And then I looked, and I guess some news about who knows what, some tariff. And the thing is, I don't think that's bearish. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't put it past First Solar to have some crazy run up into the end of the day and close above that swing low anchored VWAP, which is, I don't think I posted this chart. I didn't want to post too many charts of First Solar, but yeah. So I mean, I could, if you anchor a VWAP from that September 24th low, if we could close above like 106.75 today, uh, that would be mega bullish for me. And it's funny because I look at Twitter, I look at sentiment a lot, and I can't tell you how many times I saw on stock twits and I went on message boards. I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? And there's really no justification for the move. And so what I did see a lot of is people saying, oh, I just got margin called on my account because of this move down. So to me, that tells me there were probably some people that were pretty exposed to this and had too much leverage. And that's probably why some of this move happened. I use sentiment a lot in the market. And so if I'm seeing people are literally publicly saying that they got margin called on this, then I know that partially part of this is probably a margin call stop loss raid. And, to me, that means that retail traders are just kind of getting the wrong end of the stick as usual. And I actually am going to hold on to this one for the next probably week and a half, 2 weeks, see what happens. And if I get hit on the trade, I move on and focus on something else.
Got it. Appreciate that, Jake. I might dig a little bit more into that as we come around with just a little bit more talk about the strikes and dates and stuff. But let's get Richard involved in here. Richard, maybe your thoughts on some of the ones that have already been talked about, and then would love to hear what's been on your radar this week.
Sure. So a lot of the wheat stocks for me, just because how I trade, I like to trade stocks hitting new all-time highs. So they're not really a focus. They're kind of in longer-term downtrends. But MSauce, the overall ETF here, did have the highest volume ever on the 5th of November. So that kind of catches my eye, and maybe there could be an overall trend change. But until they kind of form out more proper bases and start trending above the longer term moving averages, not really super high up on my list. In terms of FSLR, that was actually on my focus list going into the week. But kind of how I look at it, this move today is pretty negative. We saw a lot of demand come in and it be basically bought up on the 11th when it had an oops reversal, but undercutting yesterday's low and 109 to me shows the chart needs a lot more time. And basically the move from the recent highs down 18% in 12 bars, that's a pretty negative move. And to me doesn't suggest that there's a lot of conviction by sellers. And we are seeing a lot of high volume today. So depending on how we close today, if we retake the 50-day and 107, that would be really good. But if we close down here near 100, that's kind of negative for the overall chart in terms of how I interpret things. And we're also kind of undercutting the base high, which is at 109.61, and that's set in about on the first of the first of 21 basically. There's a long-term base, but now we're undercutting that overall base high. So that's a little bit negative. I'll post a chart in just a bit, kind of highlighting that point here. But in terms of kind of what I've been trading, what I'm focused on, I haven't traded super well this week. My execution's been a little bit poor. I've had some other projects going on, so distracting me a little bit. But the I think leader this week for sure, the kind of best opportunity was probably Roblox. If you just take a look at that chart, it's been super strong and it had a breakout today. I was watching both this one and Airbnb this morning, and Airbnb isn't doing terribly, but it's not doing what Roblox is doing, which is up 10%. So this looks awesome. It kind of retested the base pivot at around 104.09. And I did share a chart thread for this. I don't know if you can, I pinned the overall chart thread, but maybe you can pin that Roblox chart too. I'll do that in just a second. But Roblox looks super strong, a lot of volume coming into this name, super strong action. And this to me is the best opportunity this week. Definitely short-term extended. You got to wait for some type of pullback. I don't have a position in this. The best buy was kind of as a retest that pivot at around 103.9. But this is definitely one to watch going forward as it forms a shelf, inside week, that type of setup. In terms of the other stuff I'm watching, I was also in SoFi yesterday. I bought through 23. That ended up actually squatting here and stopping out of basically 80% of my position, and I basically got stopped out on the remainder at the open. It did bounce off the 21 EMA, but I think to kind of heal this chart, it needs to tighten up a little bit, but also one on my focus list, especially as it continues to trend above the 21 EMA. Going back to what Ben was looking at, Bros, I definitely think that's one worth watching, and it's also on my focus list. Yeah, it fell all the way to around 57 today, but it's way back and basically right near the highs of the day. So watch for some fall through. Could be a 2-2 reversal through today's high tomorrow. I would like to see it get back above the anchor VWAP from the 10-11 candle Monday, the 10-11, which kind of started the move up from the IPO base, and then it could maybe start an anchor VWAP pinch, a classic anchor VWAP pinch. If you also draw the anchor VWAP from the highs on 11-1. But I like the story. It's hanging in there right near that pivot. If it had closed at the lows today, I think it might have been starting a longer term basing period. But given that's recovered so far and is back near 61, I think this is still definitely a chart to watch. One I also tried yesterday was LC through a DTL break. This also squatted and stopped me out pretty much flat. So no harm done, but once again, the chart isn't broken yet. It just didn't work yesterday. So I'll be watching for some type of setup. You do have the 21 EMA kind of catching back up to price at this point. So I think that's definitely one to watch as well and have on your focus list. And it is a little bit more extended in the move, given we've had now 2 earnings gap ups, but it's still, in my opinion, one of the leaders in this market. I also tried and was unsuccessful really with NEWR, which had a huge gap up on the highest volume. I'm not sure if it was ever, but in the past 250 days. And if you take a look at the monthly chart on this, you can really see how basically impressive this breakout was. And this is just now emerging from a longer term basing period. So if this really gets some legs and starts going, I think this could be the start of a really long trend. And I did try it yesterday. I think it was, once again, a pretty scratch trade. I tried it very early on in the morning, then just pulled back to my cost, and now I was out. But it's acting well today, forming an inside day. So a classic inside day and up potentially. You'll probably see it on Ben's scans tonight. And yeah, we'll have to see how this works. But I think this is definitely one to watch, given that super strong breakout on, I believe that was earnings on enormous volume. And the anchor VWAP is basically flat, and it's actually just below it if you anchor that to that earnings gap of the day. So yeah, those are a few that I've got my eye on, but happy to take any follow-up questions about kind of how I'm handling these or interpreting the charts, anything at all.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, I have plenty of names that I'd love to throw at you on top of those. I didn't even realize
Sure.
Roblox was up 10% until you had pointed that out.
Yeah,
That's
not too bad.
Yeah, pretty crazy to see that continuous movement through there. And also the market's looking pretty solid right now. So let's dive into a couple of these names that have been thrown onto this tweet thread so that we can make our way through them. And I'll go to you first, Richard, if you
Sure.
want to take some of these. So let's go with QS.
QS. Perfect. Cool. So this looks like it's a prior SPAC. So I'm not quite sure when it actually merged with the company, but it was one of those classic ones where it had that enormous push. And I think there was a lot of buzz about this name, but then it declined 88%. So yeah, it's starting to move up the right-hand side, but there is a lot of overhead supply. Probably if you go on TrendSpider and do their volume profile, you'll see a lot of overhead supply, volume shelf around 57 maybe. But it is starting to push up the right-hand side. It's back above the 200-day, back above the 10 and 21 EMA. So it's starting something, but this is a pretty volatile name. So you got to keep that in mind. And probably where you want to catch this one was through kind of 28.76 or even a little bit below that, around 26, when it had a really nice push up on volume. Back there, it was a little bit tighter. Still, the ranges were quite large, about 10% up and down every day. When a stock is doing like that and it's got that character, even if I love the story or whatever, even if it's going to go up 200%, it's really hard to manage risk in that type of name because I like to keep my stops under 3.5% or so. So when a name's moving up and down 10%, it's really hard unless you catch that real breakout through 26 to really get a good core position established in a name like this. But nevertheless, it's strong, really nice performance over the past 12 days or so, 12 bars. Pulling back today into the 10-day, and you definitely want to see some tiny action and then maybe a continuation reconfirmation. But if it breaks really down below the 10-day moving average, which is holding just barely today, and it breaks through that 200-day 21 EMA, I think the character has changed a little bit and it maybe needs a longer term basing period. But just in general, I avoid stocks that have declined 88%. Just the odds of them becoming a future leader and really going on an extended run are just a little bit lower when we've seen a decline like that.
Appreciate that. Real quick, two things for the audience. One, if you're enjoying this, this was a carefully curated panel of speakers, as you can see up here. You know, Ben, Jake, really leaning into the day trading. Richard, amazing at swing trading. I think that they all have newsletters. They're all putting out like dozens of charts a day. And clearly they have massive audiences that they've earned. So if you're sitting in here with us, make sure that you're checking them out and throwing them a follow. Three people that will truly, truly bless your timeline. Listen, there's no harm, no foul. If you don't like it a few weeks later, you can take it off. But I highly recommend throwing them the follow right now. With that being said, going to continue to grab a few more. Oh, and also with QS, you know, I did look at it on TrendSpider. And also, Jake, I'll actually throw it to you real quick if you want to tell everybody the amazing deal they can get on TrendSpider, which we're charting right now. And I'm looking at QS anchored VWAP from the IPO and anchored VWAP from the highs are both right above where it is now. It kind of just touched through them. So that could be interesting. So, Jake, I'll throw it to you to talk about what's going on with TrendSpider right now. And then also if you want to talk about MQ.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that shout. We are having the Black Friday sale. It essentially is a sale that you get kind of 1% off less each day. So yesterday it was 65% off any plan. Today it's 64%. Tomorrow 63 until we get down to 60%. So definitely the time to check it out if you guys have been on the fence about it. But QS, or are you talking about QS or
Yeah, that'll be it'll be MQ. Oh, and if anybody wants to get that affiliate code for TrendSpider, feel free to shoot me a DM. I'm happy to drop it to you. Great platform. Yes, and that was MQ, Jake.
MQ. I've never heard of this one. Marquetta. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the first thing that like kind of really I see is potential inverse head and shoulders forming, and quite a bit of volume the last couple days. I'm not sure if there was earnings. Let me turn this on. I guess there was earnings last week. Yeah. So for me, I would simply just kind of start the volume weighted average price, meaning I want to see where's the volume pretty much distributed since the IPO. I'm assuming this is an IPO, not a SPAC. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, most of the volume, the point of control is way up here around 26. So, if this did catch some type of bid, you definitely would want to watch, let's say, 26.50 all the way up to around 27. You also have the October 11th low anchored VWAP right around that same area. So, if you follow me, you definitely know I don't use exact price points. It doesn't make sense in the market we're in. So I would be watching anywhere from around 26 to 27 as a level of interest above. If this did catch some type of bid, it's down 5% today. One thing I'd mention, I like to use the Williams percent range, and this is kind of an exact time I would use it. Right, so we've got this setup where you've got lower lows over the last 2.5 weeks or something, give or take. And you can see here, if you turn on the Williams percent range 10, if anyone's kind of charting along here, turn on the percent range 10. And the reason why we're using the 10 is we're looking back 2 weeks. 2 weeks is 10 trading days, 5 trading days a week. The 14 is the default, but if you really use the 14 from a mathematical standpoint, it doesn't make a ton of sense because that is 2 trading weeks and 4 trading days. So I like to use the 10, to each their own, but that's kind of my mathematical logic behind using any oscillator on the daily charts, usually going to be 10. So for me, I do see some divergence. You do have a higher low here so far on the percent range. We bottomed out on the percent range on the 11th, and the price was at 23.70. Now we're trading at 23.21, and the percent range is actually at a higher low. So now it hasn't bounced yet. It's just at a higher low. It's not something I would actionably take a trade on, but it's something I'd look at maybe for some type of reversal. But I've never heard of this stock. I've never even asked anybody to talk about it, which, may be good if the market finds out about it. But I'm generally trying to look at things that are trending. So I know First Solar isn't too much of a trender, but it is one that I have heard quite a few times over the last couple of weeks, and one I've traded before. And just with this being one that I've never heard of, it just wouldn't be a trade that I'd take. I generally like to watch names play out for weeks to months before I jump in. GE was a great example of that. I've been watching GE now for probably 3 or 4 months, and then finally decided to jump in a couple weeks ago because the chart was there. So sometimes it can take me a very long time to finally jump on a particular name. I have to watch it. I have to get a feel for the personality before anything else.
Yeah, that's very fair. Okay, let's keep it rolling. Ben, I would love to hear your thoughts on the ever elusive Lucid.
It's just amazing that we see not only the price and volume action, but continued flow into the name. And, we talked about it, gosh, back, I want to say it was still below 30. So it's almost a double now from when we, were first discussing it. And you're coming up towards those prior highs now. What's that, 64.80 or so. So what you like to see at this point is if it does come up there a little higher, it could do this at any point, kind of flag out and go sideways a little bit, let it consolidate, because it's had a huge move. You're up over 90% in just a few weeks. So it goes sideways, volume starts to ease up, let it kind of rest a little bit there, shake out any of the weak hands that may be left, and then come through that pivot and come through that prior high. That's the way I like to see them act. It would give you symmetry, on the right side as compared to the left. But on the other hand, when you see this much flow into a name and they're coming for it so aggressively, and my understanding is they won the Motor Trend Car of the Year, and there's just a lot of news, around it too. So it does kind of explain why it's moving, 20% in a day on 300% above average volume. And it's not just Lucid because, like I mentioned earlier, MULN is in that group, Tesla, of course, but it's the whole group that's getting a lot of attention and acting well. So just a beast right now, and needs, it trying to get a hold of something up here and manage your risk, like you just can't. Maybe you could have managed it against the 10-day moving average, the 8-day moving average, even the 4-day moving average, something like that, but you're well extended beyond all of those now. So just have to let it calm down, go sideways. That's what it did before when we saw it move up towards, what was that high, 47, didn't push through 50, kind of went sideways, flagged out. And then once it came out of there today, just ripped to the upside.
Love it. Thank you. Definitely continue to keep an eye on the EV industry. Okay. Richard, let's go back to an old friend real quick and get your thoughts on Snapchat.
Sure. Yeah, let me bring up the chart. Haven't looked at it in a while. I think it rallied and had a nice move a few days ago. Yesterday. Okay, so here we go. So obviously we've got that overall huge gap down on earnings. So that's a big negative for me. It's kind of changed character a bit, and it just kind of went sideways and chopped for a quarter even before that, frustrating a lot of people. But it did try to make a move through its high volume close from that earnings gap down, which would be at a level of 55.14, so pretty close to 55 flat. And then we had an attempted move up on this Monday, and then we had to move back down to the 10-day. So yeah, right now, like I've said, for a few of these that are kind of in below their key moving averages, I'm not really interested in them. That's not really my type of play. I'm not really a bottom fisher. But that pivot through 55 is a good one to watch. And you've also got a pivot at 55.70, a little bit higher. So a push through that, through the 21 EMA would get things started. Let me draw an anchor VWAP from that gap down to see where that's at. So we are holding that today. We're back above it right now, which is definitely a good sign. But drawing it from the top of that base consolidation, that's still at 62.81. So if we do get a significant push through that 21 EMA, through the high of that gap down day, that might be a first kind of really important resistance level, that anchor gap from the highs, that you could expect some type of profit taking, consolidation, and depending on your time frame, whether you're a swing trader, you might sell into an extension into that level, or if you're more believe in this stock long term, you might just expect some type of consolidation before an additional move higher. But right now, because it's got such a heavy gap down, it's had such an extended move from the bottom in 2020. To me, it just looks like it needs a lot longer in a base consolidation to really heal that chart up before I would be super interested in it. And I was actually part of the Oliver Kell Masterclass. I've been hosting that, taught by the U.S. Investing Champion 2020. And his take on these type of charts is basically you draw an alert line at the low of the gap up, which would be around 70. And if it hits that, you can put it back on your universe list and attempt to trade. But until then, it's really suspect until it fills that gap. So that's kind of my take on Snap.
Appreciate it. Okay, Juicy, I see you popped in. I know that you just posted that you're holding Tesla. Want to give us your thoughts on Tesla?
Yeah, man. Again, thanks for having me on. I'm gonna throw the chart up here. That way, I don't like talking about charts without showing you what I'm talking about because I feel like it gets confusing. But yeah, I just threw the chart of Tesla in the middle. So I am holding Tesla. It actually started as a day trade going into today, the low of yesterday. You saw a lot of flow come in yesterday towards the end of the day at that 977 area. So for me, you had a falling wedge, and I was going to attack the top of that hammer at 1032. It started as a day trade. But as it went up and, I started to scale out and I saw the flow, I just decided to leave my runners on. My original price target was 1054.53. We briefly got above that. We're kind of like going sideways at that level. Looking for this to go to the 1105.14 area. But besides that, I'm also in Microsoft. Microsoft is also a good one. We went inside up on the week, and I'm going to hold on to Microsoft. I have bi-weekly calls, expires next Friday. I'm going to sit in these 340s.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to continue to see that play out and, just continuing to attack areas of strength in the market. All right, let's see what else we got going. Jake, here's an oldie, Fastly. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, Fastly. Yeah, let me pull it up. Yeah, it looks decent actually. So, let's see. The main thing that I would say looks a little, for now, iffy is you do have quite a bit of volume holding right above the current price. So from around 49.50 all the way up to around $50.50, you have a lot of people that are kind of what I'd call break-even supply. People are holding at a little bit of a loss. People who are maybe newer to the markets or just maybe have a little weaker hands or whatever threshold of risk, they may be some of the people that take some off the table once they get back to their average around $50.25 with the price at 49.32. So you'd really want to get above 51 or so for this thing to really take off. One thing that I'd mention is you do. Let me just draw this out real quick. Kind of sucks that we can't see this visually, but essentially you kind of have this a little bit of a symmetrical triangle forming here on the daily. So we are getting close to the apex of that symmetrical triangle. So let me draw this and kind of see where that apex would be. And it would really depend on where you draw the resistance from. If you draw the resistance from that high that we saw on November 4th and connect the yesterday's wick and then pull some more zone to the November 9th wick, we are literally right at the apex of the symmetrical triangle. So, it's kind of make or break time. If I were to take a wild guess with the market strength here, I would say we're probably, looking pretty good into maybe the rest of the week. IWM is green for the day. That was the main thing that I wanted to see. Yesterday was looking a little iffy there. And Bitcoin did pull back, but Bitcoin pulled back more on the China news rather than just kind of pulling back on people getting liquidated on maybe across the broad market. So I'm not as concerned with Bitcoin's pullback in the broad markets as I generally would be, because that was more just China coming out with their monthly, we're gonna ban miners or whatever they do over there. So yeah, I mean IWM looks good. SR flip is still in play. Your previous high was back in March around 234, and now we're really just kind of flagging here, more, or sorry, not flagging. Well, I guess it depends where you draw the trend line. More or less, kind of a pennant than a flag, but all in all, that's what I'm keeping an eye on. We did undercut it a little bit today. Kind of like a little bit of an oops reversal here. You did gap down right below that support line. I'll post a chart. I already posted a chart yesterday, so if you guys want to scroll through my feed, I posted the IWM kind of setup here, and we did gap right below it, moved up. So as always for me, I kind of like the top down approach where I need to make sure IWM and the markets are looking pretty strong before I look at an individual name too much, but Fastly, I think, could be a pretty good mover if IWM can reclaim, 240 plus.
Very interesting. Yeah, something that I haven't played with in a long time with Fastly. I remember that original run up and then got out at a decent time. But yeah, I mean, it's had a nice month, had a nice few months. Interesting stuff. Okay, Ben, coming back to you. One of the stocks which I think personally I've seen in the market, I've wished I'd taken a position. It has a ton of strength from everything I've seen. It always is at the top of these lists and everything. And I don't think it's super overextended, is INMD, InMode. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
InMode just been a beast. I mean, it is one of those stocks that just keeps climbing, and every time it does take a hit, you think, okay, that's a top. Like when it came off of 90, it hit 90, rolled back over. You thought for sure that was it, because I think it went as low as like 67 after that, and then just ripped right back again. And now you're looking to push through the $100 level in that century mark. But it's just been one that grinds so nicely. It moves rather easily. And then I believe, let me see when that power earnings gap was. It came out of a flag I had highlighted, and then you had back in July. So over the summer, you had a nice move there where it was 320%, 325% earnings bump. And when a company goes from 14 cents to 34 cents to 89 cents to $2 to above $2, this is exactly what you want to see, is a nice steady trend. And now, if you look at like the IBD ratings for this stock, they're all like A and B and 98, 99 across the board. And it has a triple digit growth rate. So this is the exact type of company that you would call a leader. I believe it's Israeli. But you push through. The saying is, you get through 80, you're going to get to 100. You get through 100, you're going to 120. So I don't see any reason why IMMO doesn't make that 100 roll, we call it, from 100 to 120. Once it pushes through 100, you're flagging out here now. If you draw a little descending trend line off of that high, and I'm going to attach anchored VWAP to that high. You're pushing through that anchored VWAP today. So as Brian Shannon teaches, you come through that anchored VWAP, you turn that back to the upside, then it can provide support if there is a little pullback. And then you've got your 1020 cloud, which this stock seems to respond to very well. So as we push through and out of this little flag right here, just look for it to come through 100. 100 is always psychologically important spot, but if it pushes through there, like I said, I don't see why 120 doesn't come next.
Yeah, continuing to keep an eye on it. Very powerful. This was one that somebody brought up to me at FinTwit conference, which was a really interesting time for it because it had just had that dip and it was really at like the bottom of that dip. And I was looking at it going, maybe. and then it ran up from what, $71 to $95 since. So clearly they've been doing well. One of those ones that I should have taken. Okay, so Jake, I know that you have limited time, so I wanted to throw it over to you, Jake, for just general thoughts on market sentiment moving forward towards the rest of the week, and then any other, names that are just kind of continuing to, be monitored for you. Then anything else that you want just people to know.
Yeah, sure.
My bad.
So
I'm doing like mad things here, man.
Oh, one sec. I think
No, I apologize. Sorry, that was me. I accidentally unmuted. I apologize. Sorry.
you're good. All you, Jake.
Yeah, so the main thing I'm looking at on like SPY and the Qs, if you and this is something that's kind of started forming over the last couple of days that I completely missed. If you anchor a volume by price from October 4th, you'll see there is a ton of volume holding at this level. So over the last 7 to 8 days, you've had a ton of volume aggregating at this level, creating a huge base for price. So I actually just pulled this up. That makes me very bullish going into the rest of the week. A lot of people already had preconceived notions that this week would be bearish because of OPEX. I'm kind of contrarian. If everyone thinks that the market's going to do bad this week, I'm going to take the other side of that, at least from a sentiment side. I'm not going to actually go buy SPY, but I'm going to use these individual names as a proxy to get a little more high beta moves. So for me, yeah, I mean, this looks really strong. I have to say that 471 is the 1.618 extension. If we can break above that, that's when I think the market's probably going to take off and hit probably 475 plus. So sentiment going into really the rest of the year, I'm pretty bullish on. I think the market will continue to kind of have this buy the dip mode, and we'll see what happens. But that's kind of what I'm seeing for now. I'm always open to being wrong and changing the thesis as price action evolves. That's the thing about being a participant in the market. You get new information every day, and if you're not taking in that information every day and either confirming your thesis or saying, oh well, this changed a part of my thesis, then you're not doing it right. You have to take all this information in, and that's how you can continue to be a participant in the market instead of be too biased and get hit. So SPY looks good. IWM looks good. The Qs, haven't looked at them, but yep, Qs look great. Bullish pennant breakout today. I'll post all of those updated charts this afternoon. But all in all, markets are looking very strong for new all-time highs. And as far as some individual plays, one that I've been watching over the last week or so, and I've never traded this, and I probably won't until I get a little more used to how it moves, is Celsius. I know Jonah's big on this. Jonah and I always go back and forth on some of the charts I post, and he's a great guy. And another shout out to him for just making the FinTwit event, just a massive success. But Celsius is one that I have my eye on. You've got a nice candle forming here. If you look at the volume weighted average price from May 11th, which has been kind of a line of best fit for the last couple of times that we've had dips, we are trading at that area, and we've pretty much moved down from around 110 all the way down to a low of 75 today. I think that's insanely overdone, and so that is one I would definitely keep an eye on. Is CELH, and this is one that I just anchored that VWAP to, so that's one that I'll definitely have my eye on. I'll post an updated chart tonight for those that are interested. But yeah, First Solar continues to be one that I do think this reaction is way overplayed, and I'm happy to be wrong, but I just have to go with what the options chains are showing, as well as just the volume by price and the anchored VWAP from that low on September 24th. And I've been adding, right? So if you bought your whole position, especially on an options contract before this moved down, then yeah, that's going to be pretty rough. But luckily, I did not go into a full position, and I actually added on these dips. I think we're already at 105. I think when we started, we were at like 103 here, so we're definitely getting a nice move into the end of the day. And I do think this is going to be a very big overreaction that ends up being a buy the dip opportunity. and you actually do have divergence forming on the Williams percent range 10 as well. So for me, that's one that I'm definitely still going to hold and see how the thesis plays out. And I do think marijuana names will continue to have a run up into the end of the year.
Awesome. Always great having you on, Jake. One more time. Jake mentioned, a lot of us up here are using TrendSpider. I'm pretty sure majority of us are using TrendSpider actively. That's a great platform for technical analysis and a lot of other financial tools. They are doing a 64% sale today. If you want to get it for the year, you get 64% off. Feel free to DM myself or Jake or probably any one of us up here if you would like a affiliate code or discount code.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else you
Thank
want to
you.
add, Jake?
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much. The Black Friday sale is by far the biggest sale of the year, so definitely take advantage of it if you've been on the fence. And we appreciate everybody's support and supporting our business.
100%. And make sure that you're following Jake. Look at those followers. They're just flying as he puts out these amazing charts. And like you heard, he had his best trading week, I think he said ever last week. So you don't want to be missing out on that. Make sure you're following him. Feel free to throw on notifications or whatever does it for you. It's pretty great having you on. We'll have you on again soon.
Sounds good, man. Talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care. We're going to keep it rolling here, so everybody stick around. We got plenty more names to get through. Once again, make sure you're following these speakers up here. Really, really great for your timeline. And then as well, if you're feeling friendly, the Golf Blacksburg account up here is my personal account, trying to get that to 6K this week. I post more about what I'm personally trading, stuff like that from there. So feel free to throw it that way. And that's where I also will respond to people. As you can see, there's the last post out has all the stocks that we are analyzing right now. Okay, Juicy, I'm bringing it back to you. I think that you've been trading shop. I know there's been plenty of strength there. Would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Hey, man. So yeah, shot was a good one. I called it. This is one of these situations where I called it. It did not take it, but a lot of members of my team did take it. If you look on the intraday, we'll just bring it back out to the day chart here. Let me just draw my extension because this chart fell off here. So I'm actually looking for shop. So the original breakout, the original entry was at 1572. We broke out on the 12th of a falling wedge. You can draw a trend line from the higher day on July 23rd, and you can connect that trend line to November 9th. There's your downtrend line, top of the wedge. We're shooting for 1747, which is the 2618. Pretty much just following suit, following the plan. I got a lot of people in this trade already. I feel like it's too far too gone for me to try to get into it because I was holding other things, actively day trading, and I had multiple positions on, so I didn't want to add more exposure to my portfolios. But shop's bullish across the board from a technical standpoint, from a fundamental standpoint. As you guys know, I don't really pay attention to fundamentals, all technicals for me. So for me, bullish price target is going to be 1747.82, which is again that 2618 if you draw a fib extension from the higher day from October 21st to the lower day of October 28th.
Yeah, definitely. I've continued to watch it, and I've seen people like Exclusive roll up their calls in it. But yeah, they're getting a bit expensive for me. He had a really crazy call on Friday there with those weeklies that ended up doing quite nicely. Okay, interesting one that's popping off right now. I think I just saw this come in. Is it TRT Triotech Ben? Would love to get your thoughts on this. So TRT Triotech. There's no options currently available, or I probably would have gotten in this morning. Which is a little sad. Maybe I should have taken the commons. The comparisons I'm seeing are it's like an AEHR. It's a third-party semiconductor with burn-in services, and they're up 82% over the last week. But I think a lot of people have the feeling that's still pretty early because there's not even an option chain yet.
Yeah, it definitely looks early, but that pivot and this group is on fire. So got to keep an eye on that. Pivot was 680, and when it came through there on volume, you had 4,000% increase above average volume. Average volume on it's 268K, so that's not a lot. But when something does 12.5 million, yeah, that's going to get your attention, and it's doing another 5.8 million today so far, up 24%. Yeah, I don't know what the story there is. Not a lot of funds in it, only 18 funds in it. But this group, so a few of the AEHR is one that most know. ATOM is another smaller one. NVMI. There's a few in this group that are getting a lot of attention, these kind of niche semiconductors. And kind of across the board, I follow the 52 weeks highs list, and almost every night there's a handful of them hitting new 52-week highs. So you said there's no options in this one. I'm not real familiar with it. Let's see if there's maybe some dark pool activity. Let's see, because that's a ton of volume. No, nothing that I see. But as it comes through that pivot, that 680 was the level there. Then you had another pivot just above at 750, and as it comes through on huge volume, yeah, you wanna pay attention to those. Every evening I'll share. It seems like it gets later and later, but every evening I share that velocity scan, and these are the type of names that pop up early. Are the ones that are up. I have it set to at least 3% and 30% above average volume. But something that's up thousands of percent like this, it'll be up near the top of the list, so that I know to pay attention to it.
Yeah, that volume was really crazy to see there as that came through that pivot point. Okay, I got a few more pretty interesting names that are sitting on this thread. Real quick to everybody, please don't DM me names that you want to have analyzed. I did put out from the Golf Blacksford account up here a tweet, and you can feel free to just drop the tickers under that. We've made it through, I think, like a third of them already that are on that. If you want to DM me, and the only thing that I would ask is if you do want to DM me, feel free to ask to be on the Spaces calendar. Basically, this week I'm doing 11 spaces. I do at least 10 pretty much every single week. That's difficult for people to keep up with. So I started a Google Calendar. It's free. There's over 800 people on it now, which is crazy to see how fast it's grown over the last couple of weeks. And it's very easy. If you DM me your email, I'll add you to it. You'll get a little email. You'll add it right to your calendar. And then you can toggle on and off and be like, oh, cool. Jake and Ben and Richard are speaking at this time this week. I know to block that off. Makes your life a lot easier. Makes my life easier. The world goes round. So feel free to DM me your email to either the Wolf account or the Gov account, and I will add you to that today. With that being said, let's get to a few more of these. All right, Richard, we've had some really interesting movements in like the payment sector, I would say. So I'd love to get your thoughts on PayPal as well as eBay.
Sure. And just one more thing about TRT, which I think is interesting, is yesterday was the highest volume ever that it's traded. So definitely a changing character here and one to watch for the future. It is like a tiny, tiny company, only about Market Smith has 32.8 million market cap. So that's a lot smaller than I usually trade. And the float is only 2.5 million, but that volume doesn't really lie. Going over to PayPal to PayPal first, let's talk about payments. Let me bring up that chart. I think this is in a longer term decline. It also had a recent gap down. The 50-day is curling down. So not really super interested in this one. It is trying to move a little bit into the gap, but it's got a lot of overhead and it's got to get back into that base somehow or just start a longer term consolidation decline. In terms of the other one, I think eBay is what you asked about. This looks a little bit better, but pretty choppy. But just going over to a weekly, this trend is really nice above the 21 EMA on the weekly. So just a beautiful trend, similar to almost to in mode, which if you look at the weekly chart, is just trending above that 10-week moving average, just going up and up and up. Definitely a lot stronger than eBay, but kind of similar in terms of just stair stepping higher. AFRM is starting to move a little bit in the payment space. Obviously, there's the buy now, pay later. It is just peaking above prior day's high, and actually it's well above that now, back above the 21 EMA as well. So a bullish outside day, potentially starting a multi-day move here, but is still a little bit volatile. I don't like the look of those earnings reactions where it's sold off, but so far really strong action today. So those are a few in the payment space, but yeah, I definitely like the look of Affirm over PayPal, and eBay over PayPal as well, just because PayPal right now is in a longer term decline, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and AFRM, I mean, I agree with you. I think the setup looks nice, but it's a little bit tough with that reaction to earnings. But it could be potentially a good swing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, PayPal also had a bad reaction to earnings, so it's kind of choosing the one that has a lot less overhead supply, right near all time highs. That's growing a little bit faster, versus the one where the market right now doesn't really like PayPal. I mean, if it's such a good stock, if the market likes it so much, why is it declining below all the moving averages? That's kind of how I look at it.
yeah, I hear you. I'm in a PayPal call right now, which is not doing great. I mean, it's doing fine today, but it got hammered yesterday. Um, I came in a little bit high on that. Okay, let's take a look at a few others here. All right, mRNA. Throwing that over to you, Juicy. Myrna. It had a little bit of a beat down, and now I think it's looking for some revenge. Came up on a few scanners for me this morning. Looks like there's perhaps some call activity coming into it. Pretty flat today, but yeah, trying to come back from a 28% down month, 38% down 3 months.
So for me, I would recommend that you have some trading experience under your belt before you start messing with something like Myrna, because it's a different it's a different breed, man. I'll be honest. I made lost a lot on Myrna. So but talking about it, if you see that opening candle on November 5th, it basically presented a range after that gap down, and we stayed inside that range. The top of that range from TrendSpider is 249.62. The bottom of that range is 211.36. Now if you take it to the weekly, again, multiple time frame alignment, you see that the weekly's inside, right? And those two levels are pretty much the top and the bottom of that last weekly. So take it back to the daily. If you break that 249.62, I'd be looking to buy. I'd be looking to buy short term for shorter term move for a move back to that 278.35. That's that gap fill. If we do break the 211, which is the bottom of the range, 211.36, I'd be looking for there to take this down to the high of day from May 3rd, 2021, which is 189.65. So for me, this is like a let the market come to me type of trade. But we were watching this into this week too for those two levels to see if they break. Because those weekly levels, when they break, you usually get a big push, a short term push off the break.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Myrna is, I agree with you, a completely different beast. You play it a couple times, you get burned, and then you kind of continue to figure out life. Okay. And also I got about a dozen DMs already. Thank you to everybody who wants to be on that Spaces calendar. Means a lot. Means that you are appreciating these spaces. And I do try to do a diverse collection of spaces. Today we have technical analysis. Yesterday we did fundamental. In a couple of hours, I'm doing a crypto space. Thursday, I'm doing an NFT space with Benzinga. So a little bit all over the place. So I find that calendar to be really helpful. Make sure if you're DMing me to be on that your email's in the DM. That's the only way that I can add you, preferably a Gmail, but it does work with any. And I'll also ask you if you want to be on the Wolf newsletter while you're at it. It's a 3-minute read once a week that highlights the best tweets from Twitter. Okay, let's go to a few more of these. Let's see what's up here. Okay. Uh, Richard, or I think actually Ben, I'm going to come back to you first. For Marvell, MRVL. So I guess this is really like the whole semiconductor industry as a whole. So MRVL, AMD, NVIDIA. There's a couple other players in here. This industry really ran up, and now it's kind of traversing a little bit sideways. There's some talk about NVIDIA potentially having a rough come down to earth off of earnings, because like that's been happening a lot for a lot of these big names. So just your thoughts on these few.
Sure. I don't mind Nvidia here, but I think earnings right around the corner. I mean, you're kind of flagging up here back into that 300 level. So I still think it looks good. Volume was really big on the way up, and then kind of consolidated, lightening up here on the way back. I thought I saw too quite a bit of flow into AMD earlier today.
You get cut off for anyone else?
Yeah,
Richard?
same with me.
All right, Richard, protege, you want to pick up where you left off?
Sure. So, yeah, I don't follow flow too much. It's still something I need to study, but yeah, both AMD and NVIDIA are super strong. But let me check. Yeah, earnings for NVIDIA are the 17th, so pretty tough to manage risk and have enough cushion.
that I noted in
There you
AMD
go. Ben's back.
this morning. I don't see it now, but well, I like to see that the whole group is getting a ton of attention. And right now, semis, they're really leading the way. Them and softwares every day on the 52-week highs. There's names from those two groups. Marvell, if you're in it and you came in back in that breakout around 64, as it came through there, it's just riding the 10-day moving average on the daily chart. Looks good. You're still at least a few weeks away from earnings. So yeah, the group looks good. Let's see, last 3 quarters, you've got accelerating revenue growth. Your EPS going from 92 to $1.44, then to $1.93. Yeah, everything looks good here. Relative strength into new highs. Yeah, looks good to me. I can't. I can't argue with that one. I mean, and the group. I still trying to pull up. Let me see if I can pull up that call flow from AMD earlier. Yeah, here it is. So, yeah, again, it was the 150s. It looks like that they were coming for pretty aggressively, and you've got $250,000 into the 160s with December strike. Quite a few 145s December strike. Again, 150s, 160s, 165s. Yeah, so there's a ton of flow there into AMD as it comes through 150. So AMD and NVIDIA, I think you kind of lean a little more heavily on those two as your leaders of the group. And then, like we were talking about, as they continue to climb and lead, those little smaller niche players, they perform well too, right behind.
100%. Juicy, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to feed off what he was saying. He pretty much hit everything. It's the whole group in general. You're seeing QCOM. You're seeing This is another one called ASMI. I gotta look up that ticker again. But the point of the matter is the whole group's going. Something I wanted to point out: QCOM had an Investors Day today, and I've been noticing majority of stocks that have an Investors Day on that day is like that stock runs like crazy. So guys, just start looking up these Investors Day. I'm not just saying go buy, but if you get a technical pattern and it's an Investors Day, you see some volume coming, you better hit that stock and hit it hard. But that was it. That's the only comment I had.
Okay, so
Juicy, you probably noticed too the flow into Qualcomm over the last week or two has been nonstop.
Oh yeah.
So bringing it back to EVs real quick. I mean, they're all running today, besides Nikola, thank God. One of the ones that I see potentially as a sympathy play here is LI. That's Lee Auto Inc. And that is still up 9%, 10% today. But if you look at it over the past year, only up 4%. Past few months, it's not at its all-time high. It's still got a little bit to go here. It's got an option chain. It's a holding company. So any thoughts, Richard, on LI?
Yeah, really nice move today. I think this is a Chinese company, which I've kind of been avoiding. But yeah, if you caught it today, it's a really nice move. And looking at MarketSmith, it looks like it's forming a stage 2 consolidation. Let me check the overall pattern. So it is off highs, but you're building a nice base under 36. So the next really important level for me is around 34.78. And then you've got that 36.76 around there, 36.65 pivot to deal with. So really nice start to move. Would be great to see it fall through that 35, 34 area and try to break out of this base, which it's been in for about 5 months, and start to trend towards all-time highs. So this is another one that really got destroyed. It's a little bit suspect, but it has built out a pretty nice consolidation within the overall longer term base. So that's good to see.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. I mean, it's just coming in with some heavy call flow today that threw it on my radar. And wow, Microsoft must be catching a bid right now because I am just getting pelted with alerts. Oh, interesting. Maybe there's just some heavy call flow coming in. I mean, it's having a great month, up 12%. and obviously just continuing a great year. Okay, let's go to maybe a, just a couple more. Okay, Ben, coming. Oh, actually, this is one that I wanted to do. And then I'll go to UGC. Ben, SE reported earnings this morning. I'm sad Parrot left. I did invite him up, and then I think he left after I invited him. Reported earnings was up, pretty decent in pre-market, and then what was it up? 5% in pre-market, yeah, and then now is down 3.5% on the day. I thought earnings looked pretty good. Do you have any thoughts on this?
It's never about the numbers themselves. It's always about the reaction to the numbers for me. And yeah, this is not the reaction you wanted to see, breaking the 50-day back below the 10 and the 21. But it's SC. I mean, it is a beast. It's one of the leaders. It has been for a while. The one thing that I would point out with this type of stock is you start getting into stage 5 and stage 6 bases. It's kind of late in the cycle. I never mind to see it reset. And in this case, it would have to take out the low 308.56. I know nobody wants to see it take out that level, but I don't think that's necessarily such a bad thing because it resets your base count. And if you're zooming out to the weekly, you see how when you go back into like the summer of 2020 and late into 2020, the angle of ascent has changed lately to where it's still going higher, but it's kind of grinding higher, and you're not getting that kind of 1, 2 o'clock move. And a lot of times for me, when I start to see that, and especially if I'm in something from much lower, in stage 4, stage 5 base, I'm looking for that usually to reset. I think Chris Peruna is another one that has that saying, eventually they all come back to the 200 day. In this case with SC, and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm just saying when it does break the 50-day on big volume on earnings news like this, sometimes that is where it finds support. And it did find support at the 200-day back in May this past summer, but it didn't reset. So that's kind of what I would be looking for with SC going forward, is for it to reset that base count.
Hopefully, good things to come for it. Okay, Juicy, you had your hand up before?
Hey, I just want to point out, well, two things. We're talking about live trading. I just rolled up into some 180 QCOM calls. Then I actually got stopped out here on Microsoft. I was up like 10%, and I scaled. I did my first scale, and I moved my stop to break even. Maybe I was a little too tight on the risk management. Came back and just smacked me right back out of it. But holding QCOM right now, just literally just got in. I got the 180 calls weeklies.
Okay, interesting. Taking a look at those real quick.
Peep the 5-minute chart. You see this wedge breaking out. We were in this before, and we rolled up into it twice. And I'm looking for this to go to 183 right now, so we'll see.
Keeping an eye on it. Yeah, I mean, already up 7% today. Definitely a runner. Okay, let's just do one or two more here. Let's see what else is popping out. All right, Richard, let's go back to a favorite, Apple. Thoughts on Apple right now?
Sure. Let me bring up the chart here. So this looks pretty set up. And we've got a pretty well-defined pivot at yesterday's high, and that is at 151.88. So if we see some push through that on volume, that could be the start of a move back towards all-time highs. And overall, it's almost forming a base on base on base on base pattern, which is pretty constructive, just kind of grinding higher. It's holding that 50-day. That's kind of a character change. It's back above the 10/21 EMA. And as I said, this is kind of a nice overall constructive pattern. We call this a launching pad over at trader line above all the key moving averages. And I would love to see a breakthrough the pivot. That would be healthy for the overall market and growth stocks in general. And this is a big component of a lot of indexes as well. So yeah, Apple looks pretty good. Nice recovery today from the lows. And I would love to see some fall through into the end of the week.
Okay. Keeping an eye on that. I also have an Apple Weekly, so we'll see what happens there. A little bit down. Um, okay, Ben, a couple people have thrown this at me. BIGC, Big Commerce.
BIGC. Vaguely familiar with this. I believe they sell software. Let's take a look.
I think they're like a mini Shopify is what I've
okay. Yeah, B2B and
maybe
okay.
Juicy knows. Juicy?
No, my bad. I just wanted to say we're up 26% on this pop. I would get out of QCOM right here on this day trade real quick because it's extended. If you took that QCOM call, my bad. I had a DM of two people. They're like, which calls? And I told them, and they're in. So I want to let you know you should be scaling out, cutting here.
Nice. Big C. Pulling back. You're below the 200-day, which looks like kind of acting as resistance. Needs to get back above there, but coming into the 1020 like that on light volume after you had the power earnings gap. So when you take that power earnings gap, attach anchored VWAP to it, yesterday, actually the last 3 sessions have closed just below that on light volume, but you're kind of in the middle of that range, and volume's really easing up. So price kind of allowing the moving averages to catch up here. Volume shelf. Let me see where that comes in. Volume shelf pretty much at today's low. So you bounce off of that area. If it can now reclaim that anchored VWAP from off of the power earnings gap, I'll give you an exact number on that. 58.16 is where anchored VWAP is now, and it's flat. With the stock trading 56.89. If you can reclaim that 58.16, that anchored VWAP, turn it upwards, you've got a shot. Year to date is what actually rejected it. So you had the power earnings gap, moved above the power earnings gap high, started to make some progress. I'm pretty sure there was some call flow into this name too, right around that earnings. And then you came up and got rejected by year to date anchored VWAP right there around 62, rolled back over. Now just needs to find buyers and step up again. So back above anchored VWAP would be the first step. Anchored VWAP from off of the power earnings gap, and then you look for it to push above year to date anchored VWAP. If you can get above year to date anchored VWAP, you've got a nice window there up to about 70. So from here, or from that 58, just above 58 to 70, that'd be a nice move.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, Richard, coming to you let's do just one more here. Looking through a couple of these comments to see if there's anything that sticks out. Let's do crowd and net.
Sure thing. Let me bring those charts up. So Crowd had, I believe, a downgrade yesterday and some negative price action. It is forming a nice inside day today, but a little bit suspect. And this is another one, kind of like SC, where it's kind of grinding higher after a really sharp run up in 2020, and may just need kind of an undercut of the recent base consolidation near 230, and that would coincide pretty well with the touch of the 200-day moving average. Looking at net, this has been super, super powerful, so extended at this point, just right in that 10-day. But until it breaks that trend, it's acting well, and I never just short based on valuation or just because you think a stock has gone too far. That's not really a winning strategy here. So yeah, net is super strong. Nice move today, and it looks like another relative strength new high. Price still has a little bit of a ways to go, but yeah, this is one of the strongest stocks in the market. But it is showing a really accelerated level of ascent here. So I think when this does break, it's going to need a nice long-term base to kind of reset things. But yeah, net looks stronger than crowd, but I think both aren't really optimal for entries at this point, for kind of different reasons. And with that, unfortunately, I have to go. I've got an interview with Larry Williams after the bell that I still have to finish up some questions for. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. Love talking charts, and love hanging out with Ben and Juicy and also Jake before as well.
Always a pleasure having you, Richard. Good luck with your interview, and we will see you again, I believe, for market psychology on Wednesday at 5.
Yeah, I believe so.
Thursday.
Yep. See you guys.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, we're definitely going to go to closing comments. So, Ben, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I was just going to add that in that group you were talking about, CrowdNet, Sentinel 1, that's one that's set up inside day today. Standard pivot 73.47. It reclaimed that. You had a descending trend line that it came through. Same group there. Had a couple pocket pivots. It's up the right side. You're back out of the pinch. Anchored VWAP from the IPO. So just one in that group that it got hit yesterday too. The whole group did, but it's one that's set up that can be managed right around here.
Okay. And anything else you wanted to chat, or any other closing comments from yourself?
No, just the way I view big picture right now, kind of like Jake was saying, bullish into end of year. Thanksgiving week's always, seasonally a bullish week. I would like to see one reset in sentiment because sentiment has still been a little bit complacent. I wouldn't mind seeing the McClellan get a little more into oversold. We've kind of been towards the overbought area. So one, and it could be as much as just a day or two kind of washout. And then I think that sets us up really well into the end of the year.
Love it. Love it. And, Ben, you'll be back on, I believe, together with Brian Shannon tomorrow. We'll be doing a 12 p.m. EST special call with him, the creator of Anchored VWAP. So everybody make sure that you have that on your calendar for 12 p.m. EST tomorrow. If you enjoyed this, we'll be doing that with Brian Shannon. Really exciting stuff. Also, we didn't get to them today, but so many SPACs popping off, IonQ among them up 30-something%. So crazy day in the market if you're in the right spots. And Juicy, see your hand up, and any final thoughts?
No, I got to agree with Jake and Ben. End of the year, I definitely think we're bullish. I think for the rest of the week, though, we might see some little bit of chop in the overall market to spike and break above. I give it a level here, which is high week from last week, which is 470.80. Anything above that, which we're pretty much almost tagged today, I definitely think we'll go higher. MACD on the higher time frames look pretty solid. You got volume coming in, so we're actually looking okay. I'm not in any means, shape, or form a bear. Later on today, guys, I'm drop a couple trade ideas going into tomorrow. My trade idea is going to be looking at Crowd, looking at Square, looking at NVIDIA for earnings play, and MasterCard. And one thing I want to tell you guys, start trading Visa, man. Like Visa, ticker V. If you're a day trader, I'm telling you, it's the most underrated trader ever. If it breaks the level, it takes off. The contracts are tight. The spreads aren't wide at all. So definitely pay attention to that. But besides that, as an overall market technician, neutral short term, bullish long term. But that's it for me. Make sure you give everybody a follow here on the panel, guys. Be easy, everybody. Oh, by the way, I'm cutting out the rest of my QCOM. I'm not taking none of this overnight. I'm just going to take the profit. On my last 10, I took 60%. So I'm all out.
Can't go broke taking profits, man. Love to see it. Okay. So to everybody, we ran about exactly an hour and a half. Apologies, we had a little bit of difficulties in the very beginning, but I thought we had a great session today. I will be back on Spaces in an hour and a half at 5 p.m. EST with Stock Talk Weekly, Brown Money Doll, and a couple of others. We'll be discussing opportunities in crypto, which I think is a really interesting area as well. And then at 8 p.m. EST, we'll have an amazing space. I see Mel Stone in the audience. Juicy will be on that. Ben might pop in, and a bunch of others. That'll be at 8 p.m. EST, and that usually runs about an hour and a half, 2 hours as well. So plenty more to go for today. If you're enjoying the spaces, I am the host, Gav Blacksburg up here. That's my personal account. Again, trying to get that 6K this week. Going to be hosting a bunch more spaces. I literally have 6 planned in the next 36 hours. So we'll be on Twitter consistently, and really excited for everything that's coming with Twitter Spaces. if you're interested, one of the things that I'd love to share with people is I mentioned this last week that I got into the Twitter Spaces Spark program, which is a exclusive incubator that Twitter's running, and we have our first info session this Thursday about what that's going to be like. So I will report back to y'all with my findings as to how much effort Twitter is trying to put into these spaces to make them successful.